All right, Saagar, what's on your radar?
Well, before I apologize because I am once again talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene, who we've probably given undue attention to over the last several weeks. But I want to take the opportunity to explain why I think her and the vote that's going to happen today to expel her for committee assignments is important, what it reveals about the prospects of the Republican Party going forward. So yesterday, Steny Howard, the Democratic House leader, put out a statement saying that he was unable to reach a deal with House GOP leader Kevin McCarthy, and that Democrats would be moving forward in stripping Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene from her committee assignments. Now, that extraordinary move comes after an internal civil war within the GOP. It was really an open question whether Kevin McCarthy and other Republicans in Congress would agree to strike first. That open question was cleared up later in the day yesterday when the House Republican caucus met and they decided to condemn Greene's past conspiracy theorizing and statements. Now, the fact that they didn't remove her shows you where the power lies within the GOP, and it lays out the battle lines very clearly in the future, which, as you all know, I think will be a big problem for their national electoral prospects in the near future. Kevin McCarthy, in many ways, was damned if he did and damned if he didn't. He has basically faced this problem since impeachment. He's got 11 members of his caucus who voted to impeach Trump, which of course pissed off the rest of the caucus, more importantly, the GOP base. So much so that the members of his caucus are now trying to primary each other. It's a real headache. But what's worse is that Trump is superimposed on all of it. McCarthy's chief aim since Trump left office has been trying to present a united front. For what exactly, nobody knows. But he can see clearly that if he ever wants to be Speaker of the House, that having internal wars over Trump probably isn't going to be how it happens. So he's made his pilgrimage down to Mar-a-Lago, and he begged the former president to intervene. He said, please stop all the infighting. But in peak Trump form, that's not what happened. Instead, Trump put out a statement saying that he would help McCarthy try and win back the House, but added this ominous quote, President Trump's popularity has never been stronger than it is today. Now, that's not exactly true, but directionally, when it comes to the Republican Party and its voters, that is generally true, which is that Trump is the single most popular figure in the Republican Party by a mile. And he's shown us now that he's going to wield that popularity for one purpose, which is to keep the Republican Party afloat with people who are loyal to him above all. And we saw that when he intervened to keep Kelly Ward, the head of the Arizona Republican Party. And now we see it when he called Marjorie Taylor Greene to express his support for her, allowing her to reveal that she would be meeting with Trump in the near future. Now, that's really important to this story because I suspect it was the single most determinative factor in the GOP's decision not to do anything to her and let the Democrats do it. They knew that Greene could rightfully say that the House GOP is crossing President Trump. That's all she needs in her quiver of arrows. In fact, I suspect now that Greene will be more popular than ever before. She has already raised hundreds of thousands of dollars, saying that she's being quote-unquote targeted by the Democrats. That is the key to raising millions of dollars, especially in small dollars, from Republican donors. Many will forgive the things that she said about Jewish space lasers and QAnon and whether the Parkland mass murder was a hoax. And so even though the GOP Senate leader and a number of GOP senators have said that she has no place in their party, when it really comes down to it, it doesn't matter because they don't even have close to the credibility with the Republican base that Trump has. That's the central problem for many years to come. The party's leaders today are just as out of touch and sold out as they were in 2015. Absent Mr. Paul Ryan, of now Wall Street fame, they're actually the exact same people. They've learned nothing. And in many ways, I think they deserve this. Because what are they doing right now? They're not fighting for stimulus checks or stimulus money. They're throwing up every roadblock known to man on the most pressing issue before the American people right now, which is more COVID relief for people, businesses, states, and governments. They are nearly to a T, united in opposition to legislation, which is supported by nearly 80% of the American people. That obviously includes their own base. When Joe Biden keeps troops abroad, they cheer and they celebrate, they don't dissent. The only thing they really opposed Biden on is spending any more money. So of course they don't have any credibility with their base. That leaves the space to people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Trump, who for many people, yes, are outright conspiracy theorists, but give people some reprieve from their frustrations. And the longer that they continue down this path, the more that they will lose. The culture war is the only thing that really unites the right at this moment. And while that is a potent, powerful force, with the albatross of January 6th and Marjorie Taylor Greene-like characters around their neck, it's not enough to win anywhere, except in deep red districts and in deep red states. The suburban whites who left the GOP temporarily for Joe Biden in November will be permanently gone, and you'll be left with a party that speaks to the worst instincts of maybe around 35% of the U.S. population. I know many of you are even thinking, great, that's a good thing. And you honestly couldn't be more wrong, because uniparty rule in America is a terrible idea. It allows the ruling class to continue business as usual with no checks on their power. And worse, it lowers the bar for every politician in America. Better than Trump or Greene? Okay, sign me up. Really? Is that the best we got? Because the system is exactly how you end up with old Joe Biden at the helm of the country. A robust two-party system, at its best, is actually one where both are competitive and drive each other towards trying to outdo each other for people in order to win elections. And the coming contraction electorally of the Republican Party over this mess is going to be a big problem in the future, and it's going to make all of our politics worse for many years to come. And I think that that's actually the key point I wanted to drive home, which is that, as per your radar, Dems are going all in on, QAnon, Republican Party of QAnon. That doesn't serve anyone, because if all you have to do is be better than somebody who believes in QAnon or sides with QAnon, then what are you doing for me?
Right.
What are you doing for others? And we already have such a downwardly mobile part of our population destroyed by COVID and more, and they don't give a shit about QAnon. What they care about is getting a $2,000 check or health care or a minimum wage, or all they want is to be able to live in their house and be able to pay their mortgage, get married, have kids, that type of thing. It's like they don't care about any of this stuff. And so I actually think a Republican Party, which is just collapsing, basically around this ring of its diehard support, reunited around the culture war, not really for anything, is a bad thing for America. And I see their Democrats really celebrating it. A lot of people on the right don't really seem to know what to do. I mean, the way to dig yourself out of this mess is to actually get some credibility with your base, but they don't have any. They have no popularity or credibility, specifically because they've been at the helm of the worst public policy decisions of the last 30 years.
Yeah, well, that's it, is that they created this problem for themselves long before Trump came along.
That's how Trump came along.
That's how Trump came about. That's how he was able to so easily take over the Republican Party and, create such an incredibly devoted fan base, even as he really, on a policy standpoint, ultimately delivered next to nothing, because their own ideology was so completely bankrupt and they were so wholly owned by the plutocrat class that people are basically like, anything but that. Anything but that
literally
is better. And so, I think people who look at this trajectory of the Republican Party and cheer because they see how easy it will be for Democrats to win a lot more elections, which I think is probably the correct assessment, even as Democrats are screwing lots of things up and creating lots of possibilities here for the GOP to get back in the game. But I think the people that are cheering that, they assume that the Democratic Party is going to stay where they are, that they're going to stay, at least somewhat supportive, $15 minimum wage. We'll see if that happens. At least maybe we're going to get a $1,400 check to some people, assuming that they're going to stay where they are. But actually, when you have this party becoming worse and worse and worse, they're just going to keep backsliding until they're a little bit better.
It's easy.
Than that party. Yeah. That's what the trend always is. And it also, just like we talk about all the time, when you have these existential politics, where all that matters is you're understandably, my God, we can't let Donald Trump or Marjorie Taylor Greene, would it shock you if Marjorie Taylor Greene ended up as the GOP nominee next time around? No. Do you think that you're going to have any room there to argue for hey, it actually matters that we get Medicare for all done. Hey, it actually matters if we have a massive federal jobs program. No. The only thing that's going to matter, just like the only thing that mattered this time, is who do we get who can beat Marjorie Taylor Greene or who can beat Trump or whoever the next awful in the line of this vein of the Republican Party is that the Republicans ultimately put up. So it makes all politics terrible. And that really, If you haven't grasped that from the Trump era and how he collapsed, he made the Democratic Party worse, he made the media worse, he made the Republican Party worse, like everybody just collapsed down to the lowest common denominator, and that seems to be the trajectory that we continue to head on.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Next on Rising, Dems who promised $2,000 checks during the elections are going to have to deliver or probably face some consequences. Team Rising is going to weigh in when Rising continues.